I stopped our wedding after finding out my groom secretly fathered my sister's baby. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. The priest smiled gently and asked if I had prepared my vows. Instead, I slowly unsealed the DNA results. My hands were shaking, not from pre-wedding jitters, but from the sheer weight of the agonizing secret I had been carrying for the past 10 days. I stood there under the breathtaking floral arch of the botanical garden, surrounded by 200 guests who thought they were about to witness a beautiful union of two souls. The sun was shining perfectly through the glass dome above us. The string quartet had just finished playing our favorite song, a melody that now sounded like a funeral dirge to my ears. My mother, Helen, was dabbing tears of joy from her eyes in the front row. My younger sister, Chloe, stood off to the side in her pastel bridesmaid dress, gently rocking her 4-month-old baby boy Leo. And then there was Liam, my handsome, charming, supposedly perfect groom, staring at me with a look of absolute adoration that I now knew was nothing but a sickening, hollow mask. How did I get here? How did I manage to put on this heavy white dress, endure hours of hair and makeup, and walk down this long aisle while my entire world was secretly burning to ash? I want you to ask yourself, right now, as you listen to this, could you endure it? Could you look into the eyes of the man who promised you forever, knowing he had committed the ultimate betrayal with your own flesh and blood? I had to survive the psychological torture of a lifetime just to reach this exact moment. I had to smile, nod, and play the role of the blushing bride while my soul was screaming in pure agony. Because if I had broken down the moment I found out the truth, I wouldn't have been able to deliver the absolute destruction they both so richly deserved. Sarah, my fiercely loyal best friend and maid of honor, stood just behind me. She was the only other person in this massive room who knew what was inside the envelope I held. I could feel her silent strength radiating toward me, a steady anchor in the violent storm of my new reality. So I held my head high, gripping the crisp, white envelope that contained the undeniable truth of their betrayal. I took a deep breath, looking straight into Liam's lying eyes. I was about to turn this beautiful garden wedding into an absolute waking nightmare. To understand the depth of this betrayal, you have to understand my family dynamic. I have always been the responsible one, the organized, fiercely loyal older sister who did everything right. Liam and I had been together for 4 years, building what felt like an incredibly stable and loving life in our shared suburban home. We had good jobs, clear plans for the future, and a relationship built on what I truly believed was unwavering trust. Then there was my younger sister, Chloe. Chloe was the family's golden child, a title she secured by constantly playing the helpless victim. While I was working my way up in my career, Chloe was jumping from one chaotic drama to the next, entirely funded and enabled by our mother, Helen. My mom has always been desperate to maintain the illusion of a perfect family image, and she shielded Chloe from every consequence of her reckless behavior. So, when 24-year-old Chloe announced she was pregnant by accident after a supposed random one-night stand, I wasn't entirely surprised. Chloe claimed the father was completely out of the picture, a guy whose last name she didn't even know. True to form, my mother immediately went into damage control and forced everyone to rally around her. "She needs us now more than ever, Anna," my mom had pleaded over the phone. "You and Liam have such a stable home. You need to be her village." Chloe moved back into my mother's house, heavily playing the role of the brave, tragic single mother. Liam and I were expected to drop everything to support her. I did it because that's what a good sister does. I bought groceries, helped assemble nursery furniture, and offered a shoulder to cry on when her hormones raged. But looking back now, the signs of her deception were always hiding right there in the open. I was just too blinded by family loyalty to see the insidious reality unfolding inside my own inner circle. Would you have seen the warning signs, or would you have blindly trusted the people you loved most? The nightmare truly began when the baby finally arrived. When baby Leo was born, Liam instantly stepped up to play the role of the amazing future uncle. Honestly, at first, I thought it was incredibly sweet. Liam has always been charming and seemingly devoted, and I loved seeing this paternal side of him. It made me excited for our own future children. But Liam's involvement quickly escalated beyond normal uncle territory. He started buying wildly expensive baby gear that my mother hadn't even thought of. I'm talking about $1,000 smart bassinet, premium imported formula, and a high-end designer stroller. When I gently questioned the massive spending, Liam just brushed it off with his signature charismatic smile. "Come on, Anna, it's my first nephew. I just want to make sure Chloe and the little guy are fully taken care of," he'd say, kissing my forehead. He also started volunteering for late-night babysitting duties at my mother's house, claiming Chloe was completely exhausted and desperately needed the rest. I would wake up at 2 in the morning to find Liam's side of the bed completely empty, only to receive a text saying he had driven over to help soothe the crying Leo. I was so naive. I thought I was marrying the most selfless, wonderful man on the planet. It wasn't until a casual lunch with my best friend, Sarah, that the rose-colored glasses started to crack. We were going over seating charts for the reception when Sarah suddenly paused, swirling her iced coffee thoughtfully. "Does it ever bother you how obsessed Liam is with Chloe's baby?" she asked, her sharp eyes studying my face. I defensively laughed it off, telling her he was just excited for our own future family. But Sarah didn't smile back. "Anna, I've seen uncles. My brother has 3 kids. Uncles don't look at a baby like it's their own flesh and blood. Uncles don't drop $2,000 on a stroller for a sister-in-law they use to openly complain about." Her words hit me like a cold splash of water. It was true. Liam used to find Chloe incredibly annoying. Why the sudden, intense devotion? That single conversation planted a deeply terrifying seed in my mind. Once Sarah planted that seed of doubt, my entire perspective shifted. I started noticing tiny, unsettling details that I had previously completely ignored. I ask you, have you ever experienced that chilling moment when the person you live with suddenly feels like an absolute stranger? It started with Liam's changing phone habits. For 4 years, we had an open device policy. We knew each other's passcodes and never thought twice about leaving our phones face up on the kitchen counter. Suddenly, Liam's phone was permanently glued to his physical body. If he went to the bathroom, the phone went with him. If he left it on the couch, it was always placed securely face down. Whenever I walked into the room unexpectedly, I would catch him hastily swiping away from text threads, his body language tense and overly defensive. When I asked him who he was texting so late at night, he would smoothly claim it was just a demanding client at his firm. But the real breaking point happened on a mundane Tuesday afternoon. I was cleaning out the interior of Liam's car before a scheduled detailing appointment when I found a crumpled, faded receipt shoved deep down into the center console. I flattened it out on my knee, expecting it to be for gas or a quick drive-through lunch. Instead, my heart completely stopped. It was a receipt for a massive, out-of-pocket medical bill from a highly exclusive pediatric clinic across town. The patient listed at the very top was Leo. The total amount paid was over $800. Why on earth was my fiancé secretly paying exorbitant medical bills for my sister's baby? Chloe was on my mother's excellent health insurance plan, which covered almost everything. There was absolutely no logical reason for Liam to be quietly footing the bill for private pediatric care unless he felt some profound, undeniable obligation to that child. I sat frozen in the driver's seat of his car, struggling to breathe as a wave of sheer panic washed over me. The puzzle pieces were beginning to terrifyingly align. I desperately needed hard evidence before I confronted his blatant lies. The opportunity to observe them closely came that very weekend during a mandatory Sunday family dinner at my mother's house. I walked into the dining room carrying a large salad, forcing myself to act completely normal while my stomach churned with agonizing anxiety. Could you sit across the table from your sister and your fiancé, pretending to eat roast chicken while secretly hunting for signs of a devastating betrayal? It took superhuman strength just to hold my silver fork steady. Liam was sitting on the plush sofa, gently bouncing little Leo on his knee. Chloe was sitting far too close to his side, laughing softly at something he had just whispered into her ear. Then, the slip-up happened. My mother accidentally dropped a heavy glass baking dish in the kitchen, causing a loud, startling crash that echoed through the house. Both Liam and Chloe jumped, but it was their immediate reaction to each other that instantly froze my blood. In that split second of panic, they didn't look toward the kitchen or check on my mother's safety. They locked eyes with each other. It wasn't a casual, fleeting glance between future in-laws. It was a deeply intimate, frantically panicked look of shared parental alarm. It was the exact look a mother and father instinctively share when their precious child is suddenly startled. But the truly undeniable gut punch came a few minutes later when I walked over to take Leo from Liam's arms. As I held the sweet baby up to the bright living room light, he blinked up at me, and I noticed it for the very first time. Leo had a highly unique, very distinct physical trait. He had a tiny, jagged splash of hazel color in the lower corner of his bright left blue iris. It was a rare genetic anomaly called sectoral heterochromia. My eyes darted up from the baby's innocent face to look directly at my charming fiancé sitting casually on the couch. Liam was staring back at me, completely unaware of the horrific revelation currently washing over my entire body. Liam had that exact same jagged hazel splash in his left eye. The chilling realization struck me with the devastating force of a speeding train. I had to know the absolute truth. That night, after Liam fell into a deep, heavy sleep beside me, I carefully slid out of bed. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely grip his smartphone. Would you be able to handle looking for the truth, knowing it would likely destroy your entire life? I took his phone into the dark bathroom, typed in the passcode he thought I had forgotten, and opened his text messages. There was no thread with Chloe. He had completely deleted all their recent messages. But Liam wasn't nearly as smart as he thought he was. He forgot to check his recently deleted folder, a hidden feature in the newest operating system update. When I opened that folder, a massive wave of nausea hit me. There were hundreds of recovered texts. Most were mundane updates about Leo's feeding schedule and sleep patterns, but some were completely damning. "He has your smile." Liam had texted my sister just 3 days ago. Chloe had replied, "He has your stubbornness." I wish we could just tell her, Liam. I hate hiding our family. Our family. The words burned into my retinas like acid. I sat on the cold bathroom tile, desperately trying not to vomit. But I needed more. I pulled up his shared calendar and scrolled back exactly 13 months to the estimated window of Chloe's conception. According to the calendar, Liam had taken a 4-day emergency work trip to a neighboring state. I then quickly checked my mother's social media from that exact same week. My mom had proudly posted photos of Chloe taking a solo mental health weekend at a remote cabin rental in that exact same neighboring state. The timelines matched perfectly. While I was home planning our beautiful future and booking wedding venues, my fiancé and my sister were away together, creating a child. My heart completely shattered into a million jagged pieces right there on the bathroom floor. I finally had the timeline, but I still desperately needed undeniable scientific proof. The agony of knowing the truth but still needing concrete, undeniable proof is a specific kind of psychological torture. I couldn't just confront them with deleted text messages and matching timelines. Liam was a master manipulator. He would easily gaslight me, claim the texts were taken out of context, and convince my mother that I was just a paranoid, jealous older sister. I needed scientific evidence that they couldn't possibly deny or spin. I decided to conduct a secret DNA test. Let me ask you, could you sneak around your own house like a criminal just to prove your fiancé's infidelity? The heist required meticulous planning and nerves of absolute steel. First, I ordered a stealth paternity test kit online and had it discreetly shipped directly to Sarah's apartment to avoid Liam finding the package. Once Sarah secretly handed me the sterile swabs, I had to wait for the perfect opportunity to strike. The following morning, after Liam left for the office, I walked into our master bathroom with sterile gloves. I carefully took the first cotton swab and vigorously rubbed it along the bristles of his daily toothbrush, sealing it tightly inside the sterile biohazard bag. Half the mission was complete, but the second half was incredibly dangerous. I drove over to my mother's house under the guise of dropping off some wedding invitations. Chloe was upstairs taking a shower, and my mom was distracted in the backyard watering her massive garden. Little Leo was fast asleep in his expensive smart bassinet in the living room. My heart hammered violently against my ribs as I quietly approached the sleeping infant. I carefully pulled his favorite pacifier out of his mouth, quickly swabbed the inside of his tiny cheek, and slipped the pacifier right back in before he could even wake up and cry. I sealed the second swab, ran out to my car, and drove directly to the post office. I paid an exorbitant fee to have the discreet package overnight to a rush testing lab in a different state. The terrifying waiting game for the final, life-shattering results had officially begun. Surviving the week while waiting for those lab results was the darkest, most agonizing period of my entire life. Every single day felt like I was walking barefoot across broken glass. The sheer psychological survival required to keep a straight face while wedding planning aggressively continued was almost enough to break my mind completely. Could you smile and nod while the two people who ruined your life sat across from you in your own living room? I had to endure a mandatory bridal dress fitting with both Chloe and my mother later that week. I stood completely frozen on a velvet pedestal, staring at my reflection in a massive mirror, wearing an outrageously expensive white gown. My mother was crying happy tears, constantly adjusting my long lace veil and gushing about how absolutely perfect I looked. Meanwhile, Chloe sat heavily on the boutique's pink sofa, loudly complaining about how exhausted she was from being a brave, single mother. "You're so lucky, Anna," Chloe sighed dramatically, sipping complimentary champagne. "You get to marry this amazing, stable guy who is going to take care of you forever. I'm just out here struggling all by myself with poor little Leo." It took every single ounce of my willpower not to step off that pedestal and physically strangle her. She was sitting there, playing the tragic victim, while secretly harboring the ultimate betrayal against her own sister. When I went home that night, Liam had cooked my favorite dinner. He poured me a glass of expensive red wine, rubbed my tired shoulders, and kissed the back of my neck. "You're going to be the most beautiful bride in the world, Anna," he whispered softly, his charming voice dripping with toxic deception. I had to force myself to smile, choke down the heavy pasta, and tell him how much I loved him, all while silently counting down the hours until the lab emailed me the final results. I felt like a hollow shell of a human being, trapped in a sick, twisted nightmare. I just prayed the undeniable truth would arrive before I completely lost my mind. The notification arrived on a Thursday afternoon while I was sitting alone in my home office. An email popped up on my laptop screen with a completely nondescript subject line from the private testing laboratory. My hands trembled so violently that I could barely maneuver the computer mouse to click the encrypted link. I held my breath, typed in the secure passcode I had created, and watched the digital PDF document slowly load on my glowing screen. I scrolled directly past all the complex scientific jargon and medical terminology, my terrified eyes aggressively hunting for the final conclusion at the bottom of the page. There it was, printed in stark, unforgiving black and white letters. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. The world around me instantly collapsed into an echoing, suffocating silence. Even though I already knew the horrible truth deep down in my gut, seeing the absolute scientific confirmation made it terrifyingly real. The sheer, raw grief of losing the two people I loved most in the entire world crashed over me like a massive, violent tidal wave. My fiancé wasn't just a cheater. He was the secret father of my sister's child. My own sister wasn't a tragic victim. She was a manipulative monster who had willingly slept with the man I was supposed to marry. I slid out of my desk chair and collapsed onto the hardwood floor, letting out a guttural, agonizing scream of pure heartbreak. I sobbed until my throat was raw and my lungs burned, mourning the beautiful future that had just been violently ripped away from me. That is exactly how Sarah found me 20 minutes later when she used her spare key to enter the house. She dropped her purse, rushed to my side, and pulled my shaking body into her arms. She looked at the glowing laptop screen, read the terrifying percentage, and held me tightly as my entire universe burned completely to the ground. I cried until there were absolutely no tears left, replaced only by a freezing rage. When the intense wave of uncontrollable sobbing finally subsided, a completely different emotion began to aggressively take root in my soul. Cold, calculating anger. Sarah was pacing furiously back and forth across my home office, her fists tightly clenched. "I am going to completely destroy him, Anna," she yelled, her eyes blazing with protective fury. "I am going to march into his closet right now, drag all of his expensive custom suits out to the driveway, and set them completely on fire. Then I'm driving to your mother's house to expose that pathetic, backstabbing sister of yours." I slowly sat up from the hardwood floor, wiping my face with a tissue. "No," I said, my voice shockingly calm and steady. "Burning his clothes is way too easy, Sarah. That's a temporary reaction. I want permanent destruction." Sarah stopped pacing and looked at me, completely stunned by the icy tone of my voice. I ask you, could you survive looking your betrayers directly in the eyes while secretly plotting their absolute public downfall? Because that is exactly what I decided to do. If I confronted them privately right now, my mother would instantly jump in to protect her precious golden child. Liam would spin a massive web of lies, and they would ultimately find a way to make me look like the crazy, jealous villain of the story. I wasn't going to give them the luxury of a quiet, private scandal. I had already paid the massive deposits for a lavish, 200-guest wedding. All of our mutual friends, his entire snobby family, and my deluded mother were going to be gathered in one single place. I decided to proceed with the entire wedding preparation as the ultimate, inescapable trap. I was going to let them put on their expensive clothes, stand in front of everyone they respected, and then I was going to drop the nuclear bomb. Sarah looked at me, a slow, wicked smile spreading across her face as she realized my plan. We were going to serve my devastating revenge on a beautiful, silver wedding platter. The night before the wedding was an absolute masterclass in psychological torture. The rehearsal dinner was held at an exclusive, high-end downtown restaurant, fully paid for by Liam's wealthy parents. I sat at the head table in a stunning silk dress, wearing a perfectly rehearsed smile that didn't reach my cold, dead eyes. The sheer audacity of the people surrounding me was genuinely mind-blowing. During the toasts, Liam stood up, clinking his champagne flute. He looked directly into my eyes and gave a tear-jerking, highly emotional speech about loyalty, unwavering love, and how I was the absolute best thing that had ever happened to him. His parents were practically weeping with joy, and the groomsmen cheered loudly. I smiled sweetly and squeezed his lying hand, internally visualizing the crushing moment I was going to utterly destroy his reputation tomorrow. But the absolute worst part of the agonizing evening was when my sister, Chloe, boldly stood up to give her official bridesmaid toast. She stood there holding baby Leo on her hip, looking at me with her innocent, wide eyes. "To Anna and Liam," Chloe said loudly, raising her glass to the crowded room. "Thank you both for being my rock this year. I am so incredibly blessed to have you guys. Here is to our beautiful, shared future together as one big, happy family." The sickening double meaning behind her toxic words made my stomach violently churn. She literally thought she was going to get away with it. She thought she could keep my husband as her secret lover and the secret father of her child forever. I looked over at my mother, Helen, who was beaming with absolute pride at her two perfect daughters. It took every single ounce of supernatural strength I possessed not to stand up right then and there and shatter her precious illusion. But I forced myself to remain completely seated, calmly sipping my sparkling water. I knew the massive explosion tomorrow would be worth every second of this suffocating agony. The morning of the wedding arrived with a bright, mocking burst of beautiful sunshine. I sat completely still in the luxurious bridal suite of the Botanical Garden venue, while a professional makeup artist applied waterproof mascara to my eyelashes. My mother fluttered around the large room, nervously adjusting the intricate lace train of my heavy white gown. "Oh, Anna, I am just so incredibly proud of you," Mom gushed, her eyes welling up with genuine tears. "You look absolutely stunning. Liam is such a wonderful man, and you two are going to build such a beautiful, perfect life together." I stared at my emotionless reflection in the mirror, feeling absolutely nothing. "Thanks, Mom. I know today is going to be incredibly unforgettable," I replied, my voice dangerously flat. While my mother was distracted helping Chloe wrangle baby Leo in the adjacent room, I quickly turned to Sarah. I reached into my overnight bag and pulled out a thick stack of 30 sealed white envelopes. Inside each envelope was a crisp, high-quality color copy of the official DNA laboratory results, complete with Liam's name, Leo's name, and the glaring 99.9% probability match. I had also included printed screenshots of the deleted text messages I had recovered from Liam's phone. It was a complete, undeniable dossier of their sickening betrayal. "Listen to me very carefully," I whispered strictly to Sarah, handing over the heavy stack of explosive envelopes. "Do not distribute these until I give you the absolute, final signal at the altar. When I start speaking, I want you to hand one to Liam's parents, one to the best man, and completely blanket the front rows. Make sure absolutely everyone sees the evidence before they can even try to deny it." Sarah nodded firmly, sliding the heavy envelopes into a hidden compartment of her large bridesmaid tote bag. Her eyes were fiercely determined, ready to execute our flawless plan. The heavy wooden doors of the beautiful bridal suite finally opened to start the ceremony. Which brings us right back to the very beginning. We return to the present moment, standing under the breathtaking floral arch of the botanical garden. The priest smiled gently and asked if anyone had any objections to this holy union. Usually, this is just a completely rhetorical question, a quaint tradition that no one ever actually answers. But today was going to be radically different. Instead of staying silent, I calmly reached out and took the heavy microphone directly from the stunned priest's hands. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw a massive, hysterical tantrum. I simply looked out at the 200 silent, expectant faces staring back at me. I actually have a rather massive objection, I said, my voice echoing loudly and clearly through the pristine venue. A confused murmur rippled through the massive crowd. Liam chuckled nervously beside me, reaching out to touch my arm, assuming this was some sort of poorly executed joke. I completely ignored his hand. I opened the crisp white envelope I had been tightly clutching, pulled out the official DNA laboratory results, and held the paper up to the microphone. I cannot marry this man today, because according to these official, notarized DNA test results, my charming groom, Liam, is the biological father of my sister Chloe's 4-month-old baby. The entire room gasped in perfect, horrified unison. It was the loudest, most suffocating silence I have ever experienced in my entire life. I turned slowly to look at my groom. Liam's handsome face instantly drained of all color, transforming into a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He lunged forward, desperately trying to grab the microphone away from me, but I swiftly stepped back out of his reach. Down in the very front row, Sarah flawlessly executed our plan. She moved like lightning, aggressively shoving the sealed envelopes containing the undeniable evidence directly into the hands of Liam's wealthy parents and the stunned groomsmen. The absolute, devastating reality of my words finally crashed down upon the horrified wedding guests. Absolute, unmitigated chaos immediately erupted throughout the beautiful botanical garden. Liam's mother opened her envelope, read the highlighted laboratory results, and let out a blood-curdling shriek before collapsing heavily into her husband's arms. Liam was frantically stuttering, desperately trying to formulate a cohesive lie, but the undeniable, printed evidence was already circulating rapidly through the furious crowd. "Anna, please, you have to let me explain," Liam begged loudly, tears of sheer panic streaming down his face as he reached for my white dress. I looked at him with absolute, freezing disgust. "There is nothing left to explain, Liam. The science speaks for itself." Off to the side of the altar, my sister Chloe had completely burst into hysterical, dramatic tears. She was frantically clutching baby Leo to her chest, desperately trying to play the tragic victim one last time. "He took advantage of me," Chloe screamed loudly, trying to redirect the massive crowd's furious anger. But my mother, Helen, completely shattered the illusion. Mom rushed forward, desperately trying to grab my arm and silence me to avoid any further public scandal. "Anna, stop this right now. You are ruining our family's reputation," she hissed fiercely, more concerned with what the wealthy guests thought than her own daughter's utterly broken heart. I yanked my arm violently away from my mother's toxic grip. "No, Mom. Chloe and Liam completely ruined this family. I am just finally turning on the lights." I looked at the three of them, the cheating groom, the backstabbing sister, and the deeply enabling mother, and realized I didn't need any of them in my life. I calmly slipped the expensive diamond engagement ring off my trembling finger and let it drop heavily onto the stone floor of the altar. It made a sharp, satisfying clink that echoed perfectly through the chaotic venue. Without shedding a single tear, I picked up the heavy lace train of my wedding dress. I turned my back on the wreckage and proudly walked down the aisle alone. The aftermath of the disastrous wedding crash was just as brutally chaotic as you might expect. Liam's wealthy parents were so utterly humiliated by his horrific actions that they completely cut him off financially and socially. Liam tried desperately to contact me for months, leaving pathetic, sobbing voicemails begging for forgiveness, but I had already blocked his number and completely changed the locks on our shared house. As for my toxic family, The fallout was absolutely permanent. Chloe tried to force Liam to pay massive child support, leading to a highly public, incredibly messy legal battle that completely destroyed whatever sick romance they thought they shared. My mother, Helen, actually had the sheer audacity to blame me for exposing the massive scandal, claiming I should have handled it quietly to protect Chloe's fragile feelings. That was the absolute final straw. I completely cut off all contact with both my mother and my sister. I sold the suburban house, packed up my belongings, and moved to a vibrant new city with the unwavering support of my best friend, Sarah. It took 2 grueling years of intense weekly therapy and a lot of painful soul-searching to rebuild my completely shattered life. But today, I am stronger, happier, and more incredibly at peace than I ever was while living inside their toxic web of deception. Surviving the ultimate double betrayal fundamentally changes who you are as a human being. It strips away all your naive innocence and forces you to confront the darkest, ugliest parts of the people you loved most. But it also reveals a deeply hidden, supernatural strength you never knew you possessed. I walked away from a burning bridge, and the brilliant light from those flames successfully guided me toward a much better, healthier future.